Hi, you guys. This is Monty. I thought I'd do a podcast. As I mentioned before, I don't do enough podcasts considering that I'm paying a certain amount of money for this program, this application, and I hardly ever use it. So guess what? I'm going to use it. And I just thought of something that probably warrants doing a podcast about. Okay, this is a rhetorical, it's more than a rhetorical statement or question, because it begs an answer, and it begs that you guys seriously consider the implications of this question I'm going to ask you. Okay, I want you to think long and hard, because it really strikes at the heart of why and how the economy works, and why people in general are working for a living, and what is the fundamental mechanism by which we value our time. And so let's jump right into it, okay? So the question is, and I want you to ponder it for as long as possible, because you may be tempted to totally reevaluate the role that you play, as far as the role you play in the economy, the roles you play, and just contributing to society overall. So the question is, why do we pay taxes? If the Federal Reserve, which they announced March 23rd this year, they announced we will provide an unlimited amount of money to address this coronavirus recession. And let me repeat that again. After the truck passes by, the Federal Reserve went on record, they announced March 23rd, we will provide an unlimited amount of money to address this coronavirus-induced recession. So, now you have to ask yourself, because this actually brings into question the role of the Federal Reserve. And some of you out there, you know, just like I know, that the Federal Reserve, its sole purpose or existence is questionable indeed, because when you use a name like federal, that implies that you're government related. But just like Federal Express is not at all government related, it's a publicly traded company that just so happens to be using the name Federal as part of their corporation name. And the Federal Reserve is really no different. It just happens to be using Federal in the name. And it's just like any other corporation, really, because it has shareholders, and it's only accountable to those shareholders, not you, not me, or anybody else. Okay? And their association with the banking system is such that the way they get money into the system is through networks of banks that are basically extensions of the Federal Reserve. So when the Federal Reserve decides to pump money into the economy, get money out of the economy, they have the capability of doing so through the banking system. So let's go back and review why we're giving the podcast. Now, when the Federal Reserve announced that they will use these unlimited resources, doesn't it make you wonder if the Federal Reserve, this quasi-government, supposedly extension of our government system, bureaucracy, if it's indeed capable of printing unlimited amounts of money, why are you paying taxes? In other words, we already know, I think it's every 2 years, pumped tons of money into junk bonds. I'm sorry, they're going to be pumping money into junk bonds, municipal debt owed by various cities for utility company, to power utility operations and such. They're footing the bill for that too. They're footing the bill for, you name it, the taxpayer stimulus money. Guess where that's coming from? The Federal Reserve. When you receive your $1,200 check, that's where it came from. It came from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve prints up this money, and it's actually debt such that it has to be paid back. Now, unfortunately, well, there's two things going on here. It's supposed to be paid back, but I'm not sure whether or not that concept even makes any sense anymore. Because when you have a $25 trillion budget deficit, is what we have now, the likelihood of you paying that back, it'll be easier for me to pull the winning lottery ticket out of my ass. Okay? So try that if you think that's easy. So the problem is, if we call this debt and we know full well it's never going to be paid off, because the last time I did calculations, each and every household in America would be obligated to pay $200,000 in order to pay off the debt. So you try writing a check for $200,000 to the Federal Reserve to turn that debt into zero and see how easy that is. So we're living in a matrix. We're living in a fucking dream, okay? So you guys, because I'm an investor in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and you guys know that. Those of you who know me, we could care less about what the Federal Reserve is doing and what the people in Washington are lying about. This is for you guys. You guys are working for a living, then you have to ask yourself this. Talk to your wives and husbands and family members. We call this money that we have, that you have in your pocket, we call it debt, because it's issued by the Federal Reserve through Congress, through appropriations and all that, right? Now, you're supposed to pay off debt if it's debt, but if you're never going to pay it off, why would you call it debt? Call it a loan. Call it a grant. Call it a donation, right? Now, you really want to address this issue. If you know you're never going to pay it back, and you know we need money for infrastructure, for healthcare, for telecommunications, for all these things, education. We need money for that, right? Why not write big fat checks so that we can have state-of-the-art transportation, state-of-the-art telecommunications, state-of-the-art healthcare, state-of-the-art or the most advanced education system, okay? It's all good. It doesn't matter, because remember, the Federal Reserve said we have unlimited money for coronavirus to address it. So at some point, we got to move beyond coronavirus, right? So tell your government agencies, your government officials, the senators and congressmen, if you believe in that stuff, tell them, just write us a check. The taxpayers, the citizens, give us, or you, let's say $1 million or $2 million apiece. That way, we'll all be prosperous. We'll all spur economic activity that you couldn't imagine, right? Because you'll fund retirement accounts, you'll buy houses, cars, boats, you'll employ people, you'll have landscapers, you'll have, electrical engineers working on your houses, automobile mechanics working on your cars, babysitters, nursery, daycare centers will be busy because people won't be apprehensive about raising families and having children. They might even be able to afford college tuition and get a very good education. Okay, so anyway, remember, the sole point of this is, why are we not being more realistic about what we are doing as compared to what the Federal Reserve and those people say? So they should be able to write those checks, right? $1 million, $2 million per taxpayer, because obviously it doesn't matter, right? Because you're not going to pay it off, and they're not going to pay off the debt anyway, right? So it's a grant, it's a donation, and believe it or not, they keep telling you guys, because I know better, but they tell you guys there is no inflation, there is no opportunity for inflation, because all the money printing, it doesn't matter. Even though your currency is not backed by anything, gold, oil, absolutely nothing. Remember, oil went through the floor. It didn't stop at the floor, it went through the floor just a couple of weeks ago. So there is no such thing as a petrodollar anymore. So you guys, get out of the matrix, call them on it. What they say is important, or what they said was important. So if you're earning a living working for someone, hourly, salary, I don't care, ask yourself, what are you doing? Why am I earning a living to pay taxes to support the government, to be a responsible citizen, when the Federal Reserve said, look, it doesn't matter if we have state and federal obligations or whatever, we can actually just write checks. We'll just add some zeros to whatever account, just like Chairman Jerome Powell said. Add a few zeros to the electronic register. Now you're rich, right? And obviously, again, there is no inflation because they say it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. That means as long as I imagine that the dollar has value, then obviously it has value, right? So you guys, you want to pay attention to this, because a lot of people are working 30, 40, 50 years in order to be responsible taxpayers and citizens. When your Federal Reserve chairman comes out and says, we have an unlimited amount of money, okay? And there won't be any consequences, obviously. Nobody ever talked about consequences. You know, look at what the Federal Reserve guys are saying versus any negative consequences as a result of stimulus. Ongoing, unlimited stimulus. They're telling you there is no inflation, there is no problem. Don't worry about the value of your currency. There's no opportunity, no chance of hyperinflation. Nothing. There is no, it's all good, okay? We can do this forever. We'll live in La La Land, a dreamland, and if we ever encounter a problem, we'll resolve it with money. That's the signal they're sending. So call them on it. Look at my article, listen to this podcast over and over. Make sure you understand this is your opportunity to hold these people accountable. When you write your rent check, your mortgage payment check, your car loan check, and all of that, ask yourself, what are you doing? Why are you trying to be responsible when actually you could just have the government send you some money, right? I mean, taxes, according to a lot of people, including myself, we think that's, on a personal level, that's illegal. The Constitution doesn't actually require personal income to be taxed. If you're trying to make money, trying to make a profit, that's different. But if I decide to do you a personal favor or whatever, nobody has the right to tax that. If I have a business that's actually a legitimate business and I do something for you, that's different, right? But you people or everyone else, everyone, you go to work and they say, pay taxes. We don't care if you're trying to make a profit or not. You're trying to earn a living? Oh, no, you can't do that. We have to tax that. That's not correct. So anyway, this is an opportunity to address a lot of these fundamental issues. Okay? So you're feeding the system until you're not. Okay? The more you feed the system, the more it's going to take advantage. When you stop feeding the system, it can't take advantage. Okay? So when you see these renter strikes going on throughout the nation, when you see people talking about not paying mortgage, car notes, rent, whatever it is, even corporations are talking about Tesla, Elon Musk. He said he's not paying rent. Starbucks and numerous locations, they said we're not paying rent. You name it. This is an opportunity, you guys. Okay? The renters can stop at paying rent. The property owners and managers, they're not going to get the rent, so they can't pay the mortgage companies. The mortgage companies, since they won't get any money, they can't pay investors. Investors, since they can't get any money, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and the FHA and those guys, they won't be able to pay because obviously the money's not coming in. So if the Federal Reserve, again, wants to step in and pay off all of the mortgages or whatever they need to do, let them do it, right? It's all a fallacy. So anyway, just wanted to make this podcast to let you know there is something rotten and we need to step up and identify it and call them out and start all over. Anyway, you guys have a great day. We'll talk later. Have fun. Bye.